My name is Janessa Goldbeck. I am a Encinitan, born and raised. I went to San Diego Academy High School with Kellie Hinze. We were in the same grade, actually, so very inspiring to see her in a leadership position now as your deputy mayor. And I have known Tony and Catherine for a few years now, and I'm continuously inspired by the leadership that they are bringing to the city. Catherine and I actually went to the same undergraduate together for not together, but same undergraduate program at Northwestern. And she has been recognized by many folks around our region for her incredible newsletters. And I think, I aspire to one day be the writer that she is, but truly embodies what it means to communicate in a real authentic way with constituents, and really, show in an objective manner what's going on at City Hall. So it's an honor to help moderate tonight. We've got a lot to get into. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to Catherine to give an opening statement. So thanks again.
Well, thank you, Janessa. It's great to be here today with my two colleagues and with you. I'll say that the city of Encinitas is very well run. We have a great group of elected officials and professional staff, and I have been the mayor and have been honored to serve in that role for close to 4 years now. And it's my hope to serve another term, which is 2 years. And I am focused on the things that the city is focused on. So our commitments are, and our priorities are environmental improvements, infrastructure, and housing opportunities, more opportunities for housing in the city. And I think we spend a lot of our time on that, and I will continue my commitment to those projects and those priorities into the next term. So thank you for having us here today. I look forward to talking about the topic that we are discussing, and I will hand it over to my city council colleagues.
All right, I'm going to kick it over to our Deputy Mayor, Councilmember Kellie Hinze.
Hello, everybody. It's such an honor to be here tonight with my colleagues who I respect so much, and also to have Janessa here as the moderator, because Janessa, I think I credit you with having gotten me back into civic engagement as a high schooler. You were the president of our Interact Club, and you were also there on the school paper. And so I joined the school paper, and I think you were one of my first peer role models that made it look really cool to be smart and engaged. And so some of our earliest friendship memories, I think, was going down to Mexico to build homes together. And through that participation in Interact, I came to learn a little bit more about how our city functions. So it's an honor to have this conversation with you tonight, and thanks for taking the time to moderate. As Janessa said, my name's Kellie Hinze, and I have the great pleasure of serving as the deputy mayor in the city. I was appointed to this seat in 2019, and now I'm actually running my campaign to be able to keep this seat and continue serving as a representative for District 2, which is Old Encinitas. So I'm a lifelong Encinitas resident. I am the daughter of 3 generations of public school educators. My first career was as a teacher in a country called Bhutan. And that was sort of where I saw my life going, was international education. Some my parents had done that a little bit, but I was called back to Encinitas when my mom, who has multiple sclerosis, was transitioning to life in a wheelchair. And actually that's another commonality between Janessa and I, is that at a young age, we've both had to sort of step in as caregivers in that role for our parents. So I think through that perspective, I saw my own city through different eyes, and really saw the need to create spaces that really inspire belonging and that are comfortable and safe for people of all abilities and ages. And so that sort of segued into my career at the Leucadia Main Street Association, where I had the pleasure to work for 6 years, just learning about all the different perspectives that make Encinitas a special place that it is. So that's why this conversation is so important to me, is that my focus has always been here about making streets that are roll friendly and walk friendly and bike friendly, and also that means auto friendly too. So when we create those options that are safe streets for people from ages 8 all the way to ages 80, we've really created a street that has a sense of place and that people can feel welcome there. So our topic tonight, our open spaces, our treasured spaces, and the connections between those spaces is a great passion of mine, and I know my colleagues as well. So I'll turn it over to Tony for his introduction.
Thank you. From the youngest member of the council now to the old geezer of the council. I'm wrapping up my 2nd term. 8 years of service on the city council, and it has been an honor and a privilege for sure to be able to serve on this council, which has provided me the opportunity to represent a community that I've been a part of since 1960. And needless to say, there has been a significant amount of change, especially in the last 10 to 15 years. The growth in Encinitas has been tremendous. I think that we have fallen behind a bit over the years, but we're scrambling to catch up, and we now have queued up some very important public capital improvement projects to begin construction. And I'm looking forward to the opportunity to see those through to completion. So looking forward to serving another term. This time, instead of running at large like I had in the previous 2 elections, I will be running for a seat to represent Council District 1, which is the northern part of the city, from essentially Leucadia Boulevard, north of Leucadia Boulevard, and then out towards El Camino Real and the northern part of the Village Park area. So I'm looking forward to continuing to serve the community, and looking forward to questions and having the opportunity to give you my thoughts on what we might be able to accomplish in the next 4 years.
Outstanding. Well, I have lived in both District 1 and District 2, so I am personally very excited to hear your thoughts and vision. I just want to remind folks, if you're just joining us, that if you'd like to submit a question, in the bottom right of your Zoom window, there is a Q&A area where you can submit a written question. We've already gotten a few, so I'm going to kick this one off. In the last several years, the city has invested heavily in transportation improvements, like improved bike lanes, green paint on the road, a new pedestrian railroad crossing at El Portal, a rail trail, and barrier protected bike lanes on Highway 101, to name a few. The city's largest upcoming capital project is Leucadia Streetscape. Could you talk about why transportation improvements are important to you and why the city is investing so heavily in this area? And Catherine, if we could start with you.
Yes, well, thank you for that question. I think it's important to look at what the city's doing in historic context. So previous councils, before any of us were on them, invested in things like fire stations and building our city hall, our library, our Encinitas Community Park. But an area that did not have a lot of improvement for many years was our transportation network, our roads, our bike lanes, a way to get around the city outside of the car. And so this council has very much prioritized transportation improvements as being key to a lot of different things. So key to our climate action plan. The biggest source of emissions comes from the transportation sector. So cars driving, with a lot of them with only one person in them. And then it's also part of public health and psychological health. And particularly at this time with coronavirus, being able to go outside your house and walk or bike to the beach, take your kids to school, go a quarter of a mile to a restaurant or a shop or to see a friend. All of those are trips that we want people to be able to take outside their car. And the reality is that if we don't make it pleasant and safe for them, then they will continue driving. And you see, especially things like schools, just the swirl of cars around schools, that some of those schools, I mean, you could have half of those kids riding their bike to school if we built protected, safe infrastructure where parents felt like that was a good decision to let their kids do that. Particularly if you're thinking about schools, you know, kids start driving at 16. So anywhere between 10, 9, and 16, it's a lot of years there where parents don't need to be making every single trip in the car. But that's the reality that we have here in the Southern California area, is that we haven't really accommodated these other modes. So this council has really prioritized that. And I've been so proud to be part of that because it's something that's important to me personally. And I feel that we've made such improvements. I mean, when you look at some of the things that are there now, like the Coastal Rail Trail in Cardiff, which is between Chesterfield and Santa Fe, was a very divisive issue. And when it was going through the process, but now that it's in, it's beloved and hundreds of people are using it all the time. And I could repeat that for multiple different projects throughout the city. And we're continuing that. So like you said in your question, the next big thing is Leucadia Streetscape, which will absolutely transform the way people get around downtown Leucadia. And that couldn't be more exciting. I mean, I fundamentally see transportation improvements as public space. So we are creating public space in areas where we haven't had it. And there's a hunger from residents to be able to utilize our public space that way. And this council is working to create that. Thank you. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Kellie or Tony, would either of you like to add anything to that?
Well, I would add briefly that to Catherine's point about how hungry people are for facilities that allow them to bike and walk. We started a project down in the south part of Cardiff between the Reef and Seaside Beach, and people have come out of the woodwork to use that facility, and it's been so popular that it's caused a little bit of a traffic jam between bicyclists and pedestrians and beachgoers. So we're looking forward to getting that project finished and getting people in their right lanes. I've recently purchased an e-bike. My wife and I bought his and her bikes, and our favorite ride is down to Solana Beach along that path, and I find it to be a great amenity, and indeed has expanded the ability for people to ride bikes in a safer way. So I look forward to getting that finished up, as well as a bunch of other projects that are queued up for construction.
And I'll just chime in to add that Mayor Blakespear brought up the historic context of where we're trying to go. And when I've been involved now with the Streetscape project for almost 10 years. And so in that time, we've really looked back to a lot of the planning documents, including the North Coast Highway 101 specific plan and the general plan. And when you look through those documents, you see that the vision when the city incorporated was that we had this pretty problematic highway running through the heart of our business district, of our historic business district. So a lot of the language around what the vision is for taking that highway and reformatting in a way so that it acts more like a local street, a community kind of country road feeling street, it calls it a linear park. And so when you're out there on the highway, you know, it's really an amazing place because in so many ways you get these gorgeous vistas and you get to see this expanse and there's these old buildings. But then in a lot of ways, it's not pleasant. It's noisy and there's cut through traffic and the trees are missing. And there's even some of these huge stumps that you can find out there from the old eucalyptus forest that used to grow. And you can kind of get a hint of what it used to be like when that was just a more simple road. And so part of this project is kind of just completing what we set out to do when we incorporated, which is to take this highway back sort of from being a regional feeder to being a street that serves the community around it. And so that's the vision, and we're still moving towards that vision.
Thanks so much, Kellie. I'm going to stay with you for a second. The next question is, Encinitas natural resources include beaches, trails, lagoons, and open space habitat. Can you talk about the city's efforts to enhance and maintain these aspects of our environment?
Sure, that's a great question because I would say on the campaign trail, out of all the questions I get, that's the one that in some form I get the most often. And, you know, I think that's because our origin story is that we are this beautiful seaside community with 3 borders that are these gorgeous lagoons in our ocean. And so we never lose sight of the core function of these natural resources and our quality of life and our well-being. So I'm going to, there's a few projects that I think are really important to highlight, but I'll start off by saying that it's our responsibility as a city to maintain these resources as much as it is to keep adding to them. And oftentimes when we talk about open space or we talk about, when we talk about, you know, that feeling of being connected to nature, we kind of think about it in terms of just the land. But Encinitas is so heavily invested with so many regional partners on our ocean and our beaches. And like you mentioned, the trails and our lagoons. And so, you know, for that reason, we have to think about our open space in a lot of different dimensions. we have 82 acres of open space in Encinitas. We have 153 acres of developed park and undeveloped parkland, so parkland that's been set aside to be developed in the future. We have 45 acres of beaches and 40 miles of trails. And then we actually have 3 marine protected areas that border our city, and I'll touch on that. So I think that from that perspective and talking about natural resources, the biggest and most popular destination in Encinitas is our beaches, without a doubt. That's why people come here. That's why a lot of our forefathers and mothers moved here. And so our beaches, to me, are their core to our future and to what we want to provide for the next generation. And I'd say that out of all the different habitats that we manage here in the city, the beaches are the ones that are the most threatened. And they're threatened due to development. They're threatened due to, damming of rivers. So there's not a lot of new sediment that is accruing to the beach. And they're threatened due to climate change. And the thought that really scares me is this figure by a USGS study that 2/3 of beaches in Southern California are anticipated to be gone by 2100. And so what actions can we take now that are making sure that we actually have beaches here to pass on to the next generation? So lots of longtime Encinitas residents have been paying very close attention to the sand replenishment program, which, thanks to very competent leadership now at the federal level for Encinitas under Mike Levin, he's moved that project forward. And actually, just as of last month, that project moved to the next phase. So it's now in the pre-engineering construction design phase. And that means that we get to unlock the state funding that's been set aside for a long time. And so the goal of that project is to make sure that we have beaches that are 50 feet wide and that offer places for people to recreate safely and contribute to the habitat around us. So very exciting that project continues to move forward. I anticipate that if everything goes to plan, we could have this sand on our beaches by 2024. And so it is very exciting for us. And that would replenish sand on the beaches all the way from beacons down to boneyards. And as we know, sand moves southward, and so that will continue to replenish the beaches along the way. We have the awesome model of our award-winning Living Shoreline project to look to that's really producing some very promising results for us. We're seeing so far the sand stayed on the beach. It eliminated wave action on the highway, so the highway is less vulnerable to erosion and flooding. And we added 4 acres of beach. So this focus on the acquisition of new land, we can really do that on our beaches. We can do that when we put new sand on our beaches. So staying on the topic of beaches, the marine protected areas are incredible. So we've got the marine protected area known as Swamis. It's a little bigger than that. It's Moonlight all the way down to Cardiff. But when it gets really busy on land, and it's been very busy at the beaches, all the way since the springtime, we have this refuge where we can go. And, I've always been an ocean swimmer, but only recently I started actually wearing a snorkel and mask when I'm out there. And just seeing this incredible, pristine sea life that we have here in our own backyard is really something to be in awe of. And we've got, the last time I was out there, we saw Garibaldi and we saw an angel shark and a ray. And it's really seeing these things where you get reignited for nature and for this core part of our city. So, just as of last week, or our last meeting on August 26th, council approved an agreement, an MOU with Wild Coast, which is a really active nonprofit in the region, to increase our monitoring of our marine protected area. So we're adding some infrastructure to be able to identify illegal poaching. And so continuing to invest in that is really us being good stewards of our open space as it relates to our oceans. So, I could go on, and I really... I've really already talked for a long time, but I'll just note that there are some new projects in the pipeline. One is the Beacons Habitat Restoration Project. Anybody who's on this call that's interested in how we can be better stewards of our very thin coastal bluff area that provides an amazing habitat to really unique species can tune in for that. There'll be a Zoom meeting to get some initial stakeholder input about the habitat restoration project. That's really just removal of invasive plants around beacons and then planting some new native plants that will stabilize that surface erosion. The date for that Zoom meeting is September 22nd, and that's 6 to 8. And I think I would like to put these thoughts together in an upcoming newsletter. So I'll make sure that I put all of these little things into a newsletter. But the last thing that I would mention is that this last year, we finalized a long-term project that a lot of our present environmental commissioners and past environmental commissioners really made sure that this project made it to the finish line, and that's our habitat stewardship program, which focuses on our critical habitat areas in the city. So these are not meant for active use, they're meant for really preservation of habitat and to restore a lot of the native coastal sage chaparral that we have, some willow scrub. So if Joy Lyons is on this call, she really has helped me understand that program. And actually, as of this year, we finalized an agreement with the Botanic Garden. So the city is now working more closely with the Botanic Garden, who are an amazing partner for us because they've already begun to remove a lot of the invasive plants at Cottonwood Creek. And I learned about this through Ari Novi and another San Diego graduate, Tony Gurneau, who now works for the Botanic Garden, about a plant called the Encinitas Mayor. I think I pronounced that correctly, but it's an endangered plant that through this program, we're gonna be able to bring back and to plant that in our most critical habitat areas. So pretty exciting things going on, a lot about maintenance and a lot about acquiring new sand for our beaches. So that was a mouthful. I'll summarize everything in a newsletter, but thanks for asking.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. And growing up, Kelly's nickname was the Mermaid of Encinitas, and I think her passion for the ocean shines through. Catherine has also recently been awarded, very recently been awarded the 2020 Climate Courage Award from the Climate Action Campaign, and I know taking care of our beaches and open spaces is very important to you as well. I just wanted to ask if you wanted to add anything to Kelly's very comprehensive answer.
Yes, that was a great answer, very comprehensive. The one thing I wanted to add was just a tie between the two questions of the first question about transportation and then the second about open space and beaches. You know, when we put 4 acres of sand on the beach in Cardiff, we didn't provide any additional parking. We didn't really do anything besides create all of a sudden a public space. And when you think about what was there before, all of the cobblestones, that's very inhospitable to people, right? Because you can't really put your blanket down and lie on the beach. You can't play Frisbee. You're not going to really go for a run on those cobblestones. And so now to have it all beach, like you can see in the picture behind me, I mean, that big open beach right there allows for people to be outside and be accessing the ocean. And so the bike lane we put in there, the protected bike lane, is a way for people to get to the beach safely, kids, families, older people, and recognizing that as it's not, that new protected bike lane is not just to go from the Cardiff Coastal Rail Trail to the Solana Beach Rail Trail. It's also and primarily to go to our beach, our brand new replenished beach in Cardiff, which is amazing. And it also has all these sand dunes, which provides habitat that wasn't there before. And interestingly, my family's been in Encinitas close to 100 years, and my mom reflects on having grown up with sand dunes. So in Cardiff, where there's the San Elijo campgrounds, before it was the campgrounds, there were all sand dunes down there. So kind of like Coronado, you know, with these big sand dunes. I don't think quite as big, but that same idea. So having some of that habitat come back now has been really great, I think, for the city and for our commitment to the environment and to our beach habitats. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you for asking.
Sure, fantastic. Tony, I'm going to kick this question over to you. There has been plenty of buzz around town and in the media recently about the mosaic art under the Santa Fe driveway bridge. How did all of that come about?
You know, that's something I've been really excited about, seeing the art finally hanging up under that bridge, provide a little color. And really, that's a pretty amazing story about how it got there, because it speaks to the way that the council has been working in trying to include as many groups as possible. First and foremost, Caltrans came to the table and they were willing to consider whatever proposals the city might come up with for art under the bridge. It was similar to what happened in Solana Beach at Loma Santa Fe Drive. They had some public art that was put on their walls that were rebuilt, just like at Santa Fe Drive and Encinitas Boulevard. And what we ended up doing about 3 years ago was we got the Arts Commission involved, and there was a subcommittee of arts commissioners, and Mayor Blakespear and I served as a subcommittee of the city council, and we kicked around some ideas about how we could engage the public and create some works of art that would attract some viewers and excite the community. And I think we have accomplished that goal. It took a long time, but eventually Caltrans was willing to build some molds as part of the concrete work that they did under that bridge. And they created little indentations, 3 foot by 5 foot indentations. And what the city did is essentially put out a proposal to anybody who wanted to, it was a request for proposals for anybody that wanted to create a mosaic to go on that wall. And I can't recall what the theme was, but it was about the community and the fauna and flora of our community. And what we ended up with is 53 pieces of work, pieces of art that I think any community would be quite envious to have hanging in their community. I want to especially thank Jerm Wright, SDA art instructor. He was very actively involved all along and helped to coordinate student artists at SDA. He was the driving force behind my contribution to the mosaics. He had some students put together a project that I had envisioned working with the students. So I think it's really been an excellent example of the way the council has worked to involve the community in projects like this. I think it also speaks to the tremendous wealth and breadth of artists that we have in our city, and speaks to the need for a art center of sorts down at Pacific View in downtown Encinitas. So I look forward to continuing to work to get that school open and turn it into an art center.
Yeah, go ahead, Mayor, please.
Yes, I wanted to add on to the excitement about this that Tony was just talking about. The amazing thing about this, for people who haven't been there, is that there are 53 mosaics, and they're basically in a gallery because they're underneath the freeway there, which is odd because it's noisy, but it's protected by this concrete wall, and then a big, huge bike lane, and then a sidewalk that you can stand on and look up at all of these pieces. And so you're having an experience like you're inside of a museum, which is really phenomenal. Like, you just have the sense of, where did this magic drop in from? That all of these pieces, they're so different, and they're so intricate, and they all relate back to Encinitas. So there are ones about the poinsettia and the Self-Realization Fellowship and skaters, and I did one as well using the same teacher at SDA. He was really great. Tony's and my mosaic look completely different. It's amazing. I mean, that it's the same person who was helping, but mine's a path into the future of Encinitas, and my son, who's 11, did some of the flowers on the side, and he was so excited when he saw the ones that he had done. He pointed up at them, and it was so fun to work with the students. We did like kind of a charrettes type of thing where we brainstormed and then all doodled, and then they came up with, how about this and that. And so I just totally love it. And it cost us less than $50,000, which is also amazing. And it's because we have such a rich community of artists. So I encourage anybody who's watching this to go and visit this area underneath Santa Fe and see these pieces. And it's a great way to spend just a little bit of time looking at a museum, totally free outside. It's great.
So cool. The quality is so amazing too. I was totally blown away, but doesn't surprise me given the wealth of talent in Encinitas. Okay, we have a question from Judy, who would like to know about the status of future railroad crossings.
Maybe Tony should answer that one because he is the chair of the North County Transit District, which is the organization that operates the railroad, which is really great that we have that chair leadership position in Encinitas and that Tony is filling that role.
And I thank you for that, pointing that out. It has been quite an experience. I've served on the North County Transit District since I was elected. I appreciate the trust that my colleagues have in me for that. And quite frankly, my focus has always been on the rail corridor. Obviously, that's has a big impact on the community. Is this rail corridor that was built in the 1880s. And, like a whole bunch of people, I used to cross the railroad tracks every day, walking to school or getting wherever I needed to go. The railroad was in our way and we just crossed it. and it has changed a lot. The rail corridor, there are more trains, they're quieter, there are a number of issues related to that. So we are focusing on trying to construct as many safe and legal crossings as possible. And a big win was the recent decision to award a contract to a construction company to build a crossing at El Portal in Leucadia. And my expectation is that the next crossing is going to be in northern Leucadia. We have a very active group of folks that are really interested in moving a project forward to see the opportunity for them to safely and legally cross the tracks where they currently don't have one. So that's what I expect, is that the future railroad crossing, the next railroad crossing, will be in northern Leucadia. We do have, I'm not 100% certain what the design, what percentage of design we have, but we've been working on the Verde crossing in Cardiff and pursuing grants for that as well. So that is in design, and would hopefully we will find an opportunity to get grant funding to build that as well. But we're trying to move design of a northern Leucadia crossing. We've just completed a study that looked at all the cross connections that the community desires. And so there was a laundry list. It was put together without regard to financial constraint. We just said, where would we want crossings? And so we have a nice long list. And the next job of the council will be to look at that list and then prioritize, pick out a couple things that we can move forward into design so that we can become competitive and pursuit of grant money for that as well. So that's what I would say is the next is something in northern Leucadia. As we learned from the crossing at El Portal, they are very expensive to build, $13 million for the one at El Portal. We did have about a $4.5 million grant from the state, from the California Transportation Commission. And that helps a lot, but it took a lot to put the rest of the money together in order to make that happen. So that's what I think we're going to be focusing on in the next 4 years. The one quick note about the railroad, North County Transit District, we have managed to advance the purchase of 5 new locomotives, and we're also following those 5 new locomotives, we're going to get 2 new train sets, which will be all brand new. So with that equipment, we will have the ability to run trains every 30 minutes during the peak hours and every hour, the off-peak hours. So there is going to be more train traffic coming, which means that these crossings that we're talking about are that much more important. So we can't lose focus of that, and we will continue to work to advance those projects.
Thank you so much, Tony. Our next question comes from Cirrus and Candace. They ask, as we age, our ability to use physical conveyances such as bicycles and scooters, even for short distances, decreases, especially as downtown gets more crowded. What other technologies and/or infrastructure do you see as useful in solving these so-called last mile problems, specifically for seniors?
I can jump into that if you want. I mean, I think that we talk about having a shuttle system around, going to the beach and circling around maybe to other cities, our neighbors, Carlsbad, Solana Beach, Del Mar, or inland to the El Camino Real corridor. You know, the first mile, last mile issue is something that sometimes is focused around working too. So it's like people get off the train in Encinitas and then they go to their job. We have looked in the past at, like, for example, Miracosta, which is our college. And when we talked to Miracosta about having a shuttle that went from the airport or from the railroad to Miracosta, what they said is that they'd rather have a shuttle that went between their 2 campuses because they have more people who are transporting themselves between Oceanside and Cardiff than they really do from the train station. So I think that it's not really clear exactly what the actual route would be that we'd be providing, but We have looked at it. It has been prohibitively expensive in the past, which is why we haven't moved forward with anything. But I see it as the part of our future, having more options for getting around in that micro mobility way that are not dependent upon a scooter or a bike. And you see these things in other cities that are they have like little buses or little shuttles that drive all around. And I think that's definitely something that we will see at some point in the future. I'm not sure when, but at some point.
I would add that the microtransit is probably the most likely solution here in Encinitas, and that takes the vehicles are no longer on a fixed route, and they're more akin to Lyft and Uber. So to Cyrus's point, you know, we're gonna need to figure out a way to make sure that the seniors, you know, they may not be able to manage an app on a smartphone, so there will need to be alternatives, but that is likely to be a way that they will have access to the grocery store or the coaster station or other places that they need to get, doctor's office, etc. NCTD also operates Lyft service, so many seniors, I hope, are taking advantage of that because it's a paratransit system that you know, the federal government requires that we operate. So if there are any seniors out there that qualify, I hope you are taking advantage of that. And we have a pilot program. It was a partner with NCTD, Sandag, and the city of Carlsbad to do a microtransit from the coaster station down Palomar Airport Road to all the businesses there, and it was fairly successful. And then the pandemic hit, and office from home happened, and so we saw a tremendous drop in transit ridership. It is picking up. It's still got a long ways to go before it fully recovers, but San Marcos is going to be doing microtransit next. And you know, my hope is that we can put together a program that we might pilot in Encinitas to see if we can expand the use of public transit and get people out of their single occupancy vehicles.
Yeah, I would like to add one final thought, and that is the gentleman named Dan Burden, who has informed a lot of our built environment decisions surrounding our roads in Encinitas. He is part of this group, which is world famous, and it's called the Blue Zones Group. And they've been on the cover of National Geographic, I think, about 7 times, and they study these places in the world where people live to be over 100 years old, and what's going right in those places where people live that long. And usually they're living that long with a really high quality of life. And the built environment is so important in extending people's ability to live that long. And so all of these improvements that we're making, especially to rail undercrossings and safe bike lanes and extending sidewalks, you know, Leucadia doesn't even have connected sidewalks, is that people can feel safe for longer getting out of their homes on foot. And I think that the longer that they're doing that safely, the more likely they are to age well and to stay healthy till later in life. And I think that that's really key for seeing the future of our community, is creating a built environment that supports seniors walking around and being active just from having stepped out their doorstep to be able to do that.
Thanks, Kelly. Tony and Kelly both received some questions via email. I'm gonna kick it back over to Tony. The first question is about traffic engineering studies and how the city takes feedback on that. You can probably summarize in a better way than I can.
Yeah, and I see that Steve Gherkin, who sent that email, has also added his question to the Q&A, and it is about you know, asking questions of involved citizens when we have issues before the council, either on appeal or if we're making a decision about you know, a new trail. I know Steve was very active in Safe Routes to School. His children go to Ocean Old School, so he was quite active in that. And I appreciate all of the work that he did to advance Safe Routes to Schools, because as had been alluded to earlier, schools that are just buzzing with cars is a terrible way for kids to start the day. So if we can improve Safe Routes to School so that they can they can get to school without driving in a car, that would be ideal. But back to his question, he's talking about asking more questions in staff, and I think he's referring to the appeal of the school that was over off of Quail Gardens Drive. And I think, you know, one of the things that is important when I hear an appeal is I look at staff reports that take question, each point that was made in the appeal is analyzed by staff. And so I have the staff's response to the appeal item. And when I'm hearing an appeal, I'm very much listening for a response from the appellant to refute what staff has said. And so that's the most important thing. And I didn't hear that. So, you know, that's the most common way that I address items on appeal, is to see how the appellant has responded to staff. And you know, it's challenging. The staff report comes out 5 days before the hearing, so it isn't easy, but that's the way I approach it. And so the other part of your question, Steve, relates to affordability and the number of units that the city requires in our inclusionary housing ordinance to be deed restricted affordable in any project. I did, when I got your email, Steve, I looked up Tiburon, and I don't see them at 35%. They have the same percentages that the city of Encinitas has, which are currently 10% for very, very, very low and 15 for low. And we are due to have a study back that is going to let us finalize. We've had this on the agenda twice already and had the associated analysis that's required to identify the inclusionary housing percentages. So that is coming back, and you know, I do expect it could probably go to 20% in this round of the housing element. You know, I think we missed an opportunity because we were under the gun of HCD and the courts. We might have had the conversation of about inclusionary per parcel, because some of the parcels, when they got the zoning overlay that allowed them to increase the density, could have probably afforded a higher percentage of inclusionary as part of their project. But we did not have the time to do that. And so the results are what they are. The other thing that I hear often in conversations about our inclusionary number and the fact that we're out of these upzone parcels not getting enough deed restricted affordable, you know, that there is a limit, and it's a legal limit as well as a regulatory limit. The HCD will not allow the city to put a number on there that is going to make it infeasible to develop. So it isn't like we can just say, yeah, make it 95% affordable. It's not, we don't have that sort of discretion. So we are conducting the necessary studies in order to possibly increase it. And maybe the mayor knows when that might be coming back to us, but that's what I think we're waiting on.
Well, yeah, and I'll just briefly say that I think we've talked about the inclusionary percentage a lot. So just to review what that is for people who aren't living in that world, that's the percentage of any project that has to be deed restricted affordable. So if there are 10 units and you're at 10%, then 1 unit's deed restricted affordable. If it's 20%, 2 are. And we cannot go to 50% or 90% or 100% because it makes the project quote, infeasible. So that means that a developer will not build the housing because they have to set aside too much of it that they basically are not making a profit on. I've stated multiple times in public meetings, and I'll state it again here, that I believe we should have the highest inclusionary percentage legally possible. And we have done that in terms of the easiest. So we went from 10 to 15%, and then there was some additional analysis that needed to be done. We hired an outside consultant. We had a joint meeting with the Planning Commission and the City Council, and then we kicked it over to the Planning Commission to make the final recommendations on the inclusionary ordinance. And I don't know where that is. I don't know if that's an issue that they have heard recently or haven't or are going to, but it's certainly worth following up on, because that inclusionary percentage is what we can guarantee will be affordable. So having it be as high as possible results in us having more affordable units instead of fewer. So I will say that the other side, our other argument is that when you force a high percentage of affordability, then all the other units are as expensive as possible. And there aren't any moderate income units that are built because the finances don't work out that way. But I think, to me, on balance, we still, our most important thing is to build more affordable housing. So that's where we need to prioritize. So I think it is something that's still evolving, but it should be at the Planning Commission level.
And I would like to add that, you know, when we're talking about the inclusionary housing ordinance, we're talking about deed restricted, which is obviously the best because it ensures that they will remain affordable by the calculations of the government that they do for affordability. But you can also have market rate affordable units as well if they are the right size. If they get too big, then they become more expensive and they are not affordable by design. So what I think we're seeing in some of these projects that are coming forward, these multifamily projects, that the size of the apartments that are going to be for rent are going to put the price very close to affordable. And if we can get HCD to certify their, you know, depending on how much they're renting for right out of the gate, it's possible to have some of those market rate units count towards our RHNA requirement. And so, you know, we hear so much about the deed restricted affordable and we forget about the opportunity to design something that will naturally, the free market will make affordable.
And I'll just quickly answer those questions posed by Steve as well, because I think they were directed at me as well. And to answer the question, Steve, you know, when do we deviate from the professional staff's opinion and make a decision different from that of the professional staff? And, you know, it is hard because you rely on staff to make these findings and to rely on this technical studies. But we have done it. You know, Tony and I were the dissenting votes on a project on Bonita that came to us on appeal. And that project to me didn't seem like we were accomplishing what we wanted to in terms of a density bonus unit, because the existing property that was on site there provided housing for 2 people, 2 different households, but the project proposed to only replace it with 1 unit that would have been a deed restricted affordable unit. And so in that time, I had to disagree with our professional staff that it met the requirement of density bonus. And so that was one example. And then another recent one was the denial of the Surfers Point timeshare, where, you know, our staff was saying that the environmental documents were up to date and that they felt that the project could move forward as planned. And it really took a lot of reliance on just other planning documents, digging deep into our general plan, and, you know, thinking too about what we're trying to accomplish with our climate action goals that weren't incorporated into the most recent environmental studies. So, you know, I will acknowledge that it's hard to disagree with our staff, but that there are times that it's necessary. So that hopefully answers your first question. And then the second one about housing, I think the point that is most important to me is what the mayor said, in that whatever, you know, we've really relied on the private market to build our affordable housing. We're not taking that on as a city at this time and saying, you know, we want to do 100% affordable so that we can bring the number of dwelling units down. So when you for so long, you know, are not in a position of creating affordable housing at the city level, and the market has to do it, for every affordable unit built, you have to increase the price of the other market rate unit. So, you know, I'm hoping that Councilmember Kranz is accurate in his prediction that a lot of these new units that aren't deed restricted will be affordable by design, and that they will be housing for the middle class, because that's what we're missing in Encinitas is middle class housing. But I fear that the higher the inclusionary ordinance goes up, the more luxury version of these condos and apartment buildings we'll have to live with, because and then we'll have forgotten the middle class in that planning. So I am curious too to see the results of the studies, but it is important, I think, that we have the results of that study before, you know, saying an opinion about it with finality. So good questions.
Thanks for answering, everybody for answering those. There's a question here from Rob Randolph that I was going to read and try to answer if that works for you, Janessa.
Please, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So he says, love the bike lanes and prioritization of non-auto-centric transportation. Thank you. On another subject, I'm struggling with the amount of proposed housing development. How will we be able to meet the state's increased housing mandate without radical upzoning and forever losing our community character? It seems that we simply do not have the land and transportation capacity to accommodate. Please share your thoughts. So, and I just want to kind of be totally honest with the answer here. A way for us to actually meet these housing mandates would be to do a housing bond like the city of San Diego is doing in November. There's a housing bond on their ballot that would provide funding for us to build 100% affordable housing. And that would say that if we are supposed to have 1,500 units, or 700 units, that we build them. The city collects money from property taxes and we build them. I think we would have a problem citing it. You know, it's always a question of where, because I haven't run into a place in the city where it seems like there's any consensus that that's a good place. So we would be, you know, we would need to continue to do some hard work to figure out location. There are certainly opportunities on El Camino Real for revitalization, and there had been interest from some to have commercial on the bottom and then some residential on the top in some of those certain areas on El Camino Real. But of course it wouldn't be the whole corridor, but a little bit here or there. And so that, I think that's something that we as a city will need to start talking about. I mean, the housing cycles they come every either 4 years or 8 years, depending on whether we're behind or not. We have been behind, so we're on a 4-year cycle, and we're not going to be changing that world anytime soon. If you look at the state laws and the governor and the housing crisis and the homelessness crisis, so it's really struggling with and reckoning with our approach to growth and making it so that we do provide affordable housing and we don't result in this massive upzoning. I think that is a conversation that we'll need to be having in the future.
Yeah, and I would add to Rob's point that the old strategy that cities employed to create a housing element that, you know, maybe took a strip mall and rezoned it to be mixed use. We were looking at that with Measure T, and you know, it would have had Measure T passed, we would have very little development out of that Cycle 5 housing element, but it did not pass. And by the time we were working on Measure U, a whole bunch of new state laws were enacted that we had to, you know, comply with, and it made it much more likely that instead of just having a plan that really nothing ever got developed from, we were putting together a plan that was definitely going to see some development, and we're experiencing it now. And you know, the reality is that this idea that the free market, the government makes the plan, and then the free market will come along and build the housing, and it'll be X percentage affordable in your inclusionary housing ordinance, is a terrible way to do this, because for every project that gets built, we're looking at having to account for about 80% of that project unit upzoning somewhere else. And the city of Encinitas cannot continue to you know, end up having to upzone more for every project that gets built from this existing housing element. So if we don't take some action as described by the mayor, where we dive into the middle of this, I think we're going to really kind of regret the impacts of the housing laws that are being enacted at the state level.
And I'll just add that we could use everyone's help. You know, we need all the voices that say, we want to provide a diverse community. We want to provide affordable housing. We want places for people to live as they age. We want places for our kids to live when they grow up and they're young professionals. We don't want to be basically priced out for all the people who call Encinitas home. We need all those voices to participate. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, I agree with that, make sure that when these dialogues come up again and again and again in the future, that you participate in that, because we need it.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Do you mind if I add one last final thought? And it's something that has become clear, I think, after all these years, where for so long we thought we had the choice to say yes or no to new housing, and now we have to say how to new housing. And so I hope that we can meet that discussion with that question rather than just saying yes or no, because no is really not an option. And so we have to say how. How do we all live together better? How do we choose projects and places that let us live well together? And that's really the goal that we need the community to step in to help solve.
Well, thank you so much to our panelists, really thoughtful answers. We still actually have a couple of very thoughtful questions in the chat, but we are gonna run out of time. So our tech support is gonna drop the email addresses of your council members and mayor into the chat. If you did not have your question answered tonight, please follow up, and I know they would love to continue the conversation with you further. Before we wrap things up here, I just wanna thank everyone for making the time. And also put in a little plug. You know, I recently ran as a candidate in my first race, and one of the hard facts and hard truths about running for office is you spend a lot of your time fundraising, because sending things in the mail and putting digital ads up and yard signs and all that doesn't come out of thin air. You've got to raise the money to do it, and there are so many important things going on in the world today. There are so many reasons why people might not be paying attention to local politics because they are struggling in their own lives with the pandemic and the economic recession that we're facing, which means it's more important than ever that our local council members and our mayor are able to reach those folks through the mail or through digital advertising, or being able to leave a door hanger on their doorstep. So if you can, you know, in a race like this, $5, $10, $15, $100 makes a huge difference. So I would like to encourage everyone on the call, if you like what you hear, if you are inspired by the thoughtful and empathetic leadership that you have on your council, to please visit Mayor Blakespear's website, Kellie's website, Tony's website, and make a financial contribution. With that, I will return it back over to Tony for closing remarks.
Yes, in my closing remarks, Janessa, first I'd like to thank you for doing this tonight. It was great that you could help us get through the important questions that are being asked. Christine Perkis has asked about the subject of trains and eliminating the deafening horn blasts. And I would like to say in my closing statement that one really important accomplishment that I've had this last term is the construction of a quiet zone at Chesterfield Drive in Cardiff. It has made a huge difference to that community to have trains go through there without having to sound their horns. And we have done the study. We know what supplemental safety measures are required by the Federal Railroad Administration in order to extend the quiet zone up through the rest of town. So this next term, I will be working to put together the design for each of those intersections. There's one at E Street, there's one at D Street, there's one in the train station downtown, and then there's Leucadia Boulevard. And we desperately need to expand that quiet zone so that it extends throughout our entire city. So I look forward to being elected to serve District 1 for another 4 years, and I will continue to work on these projects to continue improving our quality of life. And thank you for the opportunity to serve so far, and I look forward to the opportunity to serve another term.
Thank you, Council Member. Kellie?
Well, I would like to invite all of you who have been asking and continue to ask how you can best support us. And of course, contributions help so much. The mayor and I have joined forces with Tara Lawson-Remer, who's running for county supervisor of District 3, so to represent us there at the county level. And we're launching a big volunteer effort to do touchless, so contactless door hanger drops throughout District 2, which is the district I represent. So everyone who lives in District 2 has the opportunity to vote for the three of us, for myself, for Mayor Blakespear, and Tara Lawson-Remer. So the information for that effort is, I think it'll probably pop up here soon by the IT, there it is. To volunteer, please join us. It's really, I'm calling it an all hands on deck moment where we could use all of you and to ask your networks to join us as well. And I think really in these COVID times, the thing that folks are looking for most when electing a candidate is a word of mouth recommendation from somebody they trust. So if you like where our heads are at, you like how we communicate, and you'd like to see our leadership stay intact, please just write an email to your friends, everybody who votes in Encinitas, and let them know that you feel that way and you'll be supporting us. And that's really it. I really hope that I win this election because it's been such an honor to serve Encinitas, and there's some projects that I would really love to see come to fruition. And there's no end to the enthusiasm I feel for the future of our city. So thanks, Janessa, and such a pleasure.
Thank you so much. And Mayor Blakespear, if you could close us out.
Yes. Well, thank you. I really support both of these two candidates. Councilmember Kranz and the deputy mayor have served really excellently in the last 2 years. Kellie's been on about 2 years. Tony's been on 8 years. And we really make a great team. I think there's no underestimating what 5 elected officials and a professional staff and community members all working together can accomplish. You've seen great things in the city in the last several years, and we have great things in front of us. And that stuff doesn't just happen. It can seem inevitable as it's unfolding, but really it's not. You look around at other cities, you read the newspaper, and you see, wow, some of these cities spend a lot of time in political theater and in dysfunction, basically a lot of dysfunction. And we are so lucky not to be in that position. Encinitas is a safe city, among the safest in the entire county. We are stable, financially stable, even in these COVID times. We're not cutting our parks and recreation programming. We're not cutting back on the amount of time things are open, or cutting our law enforcement, things that other cities are having to consider. And we have a lot of exciting projects in front of us, and I can't wait to get started on it. There's a lot to do, and I can't wait to do it. So thank you, everybody, for your support and the support of the 2 candidates who are on this Zoom. And thank you so much, Janessa, for running this today. And I look forward to the election and getting started on that next stage.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. Please tune in again for our next one of these, and visit the websites and those links below to support these candidates. Thank you again.